If you would join me to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, tonight is a celebratory night for our board because you two gentlemen made such a spectacular presentation. I haven't heard a peep from the selectmen, but there seemed to be applause. It was a fantastic meeting. And Renee is having a birthday.
Oh,
And he was
well,
gonna
now
keep
that's
us
something
in-
to celebrate.
And-
All right.
What I could do is I could light all these candles, and I have a feeling we'd get arrested.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
right.
know if this was on the agenda, Irene. If it's not on the agenda, I don't think you can do this. No.
All right.
Can you do that? It's,
Ah!
thank you. Thank you very much.
This is because Renee asked me to make it a very tight, efficient meeting, like we rarely do. So that he could go out and celebrate with his friends. I hope you will all participate. These are silverware, these are napkins.
So what are we celebrating?
If you've never seen them before.
I'm an old fart. Can I say that on TV?
And again, I want to reiterate that I may
Are
not
you
hear
having
as
one?
clearly as I'd like to. I'll let it go down. So if you feel ignored, just yell at me, okay? My head's still plugged. The first thing is the approval of minutes. I'm sure you've all read your minutes, and I'm sure somebody,
Make a motion to
Go and open
approve the
dessert.
minutes.
does anybody need an agenda?
I'll approve the minutes. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, did you get that, sir? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. And again, thank you, Sharon. You do a great job. We do not officially have to approve the minutes that Sharon provided for us for the selectmen's meeting. It wasn't an official meeting of our committee, and, but I really appreciate having the minutes. So if you haven't had a chance to read them, please do so. It gives us a record for our records, that what was happening was important. The next issue on our agenda is for John and then Valerie to update us.
Yes, so I just want to second the thanks to Bob and Renee for their presentation to the select board, and sharing our proposal with them. It was very professional, as we all expected, so thank you both for doing that. All right, so, as you know, I've been talking about this the last few meetings. We have now switched our video hosting site from Vimeo to YouTube. A couple of reasons why. I'll say it for the last time, hopefully, that Vimeo, you can only buy 7 terabytes of storage. And we have over 2,000 videos now. We're approaching that 7 terabyte thing. We would hit it this year. YouTube is free. We stream through YouTube, so I think it was just, and more people know about YouTube. It's easy to tell someone if they ask you, hey, where can I watch this thing you're filming? It's easy to say YouTube, and more people know it. So there are a lot of checks in the YouTube column to make that switch, and we did it. And I think it's going good. I haven't heard Valerie really say anything negative about it. So I think we're working good on it. Valerie's also some of the older, the last few months, videos, she's been uploading them too. So we also we wrote all the board members and told them about the switch, and I wrote the select board. So if anyone's looking, they can obviously just write one of us too, and we'll tell them how to do it.
John?
Yep.
So one thing, I don't know if you guys discovered yet, but you can create playlists for all the specific meetings. So in other words, like
Yep.
all the cable advisory meetings will be on a playlist. All the Board of Selectmen meetings will be on another playlist, and it organizes the site really well.
Yep.
Um,
We have done that,
Okay, great.
and I made a quick little 1-minute video too that is somewhere. Did I post that, or did we share it, but telling people that,
Great,
about the switch
Yep.
and that. But yep, the playlists are
Awesome.
very handy.
yeah.
And the interface is better too than Vimeo, because we can move videos around where we want them, whereas Vimeo, we used to, but they stopped that about 2 years ago. All right, now to the good stuff. The Spectrum update with the encoders. The encoders finally came in. The techs finally showed up on October 12th. They installed the other 2 encoders with power supplies, but they could not ping. They could ping to the head end wouldn't ping back to the TV studio. They were there all day long. They were on the phone or on a laptop with engineers from wherever. They tried, they get an A+ for effort, but they couldn't complete the job. So they left with it incomplete. The following day, they were going to another community in Massachusetts to do the same install. And apparently it took them 3 days there, but they finally figured out how to do it. So they said, all right, let's reschedule for Westport, which they did. They came back October 21st, so 9 days later. It was really the next week, so that was impressive. I met the tech in the parking lot. He was all ready to go. He knew what he was doing, and his phone went off, and it was a supervisor telling him to leave immediately. He was needed at a police station outage 2 hours away. So he could not do what he said would be a 15-minute finish up the job thing. They would not let him go inside and do that. So we tried to reschedule. I wrote a couple of times to our friend Glenda, and the last time I wrote was Monday, and she still hasn't wrote me back to reschedule that. So it's the gift that keeps on giving.
This is over a year and a half, correct?
This started in, I first met this guy in March of this year.
I
Yeah,
thought
but
when
we
you
were
moved
waiting,
in,
you're right,
yeah,
Irene, we were waiting long before that.
When you moved into the building, you were beginning to, the
Yep.
process, so.
Yep.
We,
Yeah.
We put the order in, like you said, a year and a half ago.
Last town meeting, got the money. and
Yep.
We didn't get it because it was,
Yeah, but-
messed up with that other thing, but, yeah.
Yep. So they know, it's just been, and I'm sure it's true, they blame the encoders not being in on the supply chain, so.
Yeah.
I think we can hope that this is corrected, but I think we should still leave it high on a list of things
It's
to
very
talk
high.
about with the Director of Government Affairs, who has written us through Jim Hartnett and said he'd like to talk, being that it's renewal time. So, whatever happens, keep us posted, but let's keep the details about the process, the very long, strung-out, complicated process
Yep.
that you have had to experience, so that we can recall it in all of its nastiness. I mean, really, nobody would provide customer service like this.
No,
So one suggestion, I don't know if you've done it, but I would probably follow up with this particular woman and maybe CC the government relations person on it, and kind of in a brief synopsis of whatever, just say, hey, we've been waiting for this install for a year or however long the timetable was, but I would CC the government relations person on it so that they're aware of it, and, hopefully you'll get,
And how can it be so, not have people, company so big?
well, yeah, I mean, resources are all over the place, and the way, I mean, if you hear what's going on at Facebook and all these places, they're all having massive layoffs, and everybody's belt tightening, everything costs more, everything is, downsizing, whatever, but, and maybe CC the board as well on that,
Mhm.
so we're included as well.
I don't have the letters.
Because I'll jump on there and say,
I don't have the letter.
our
that
programming
came.
is dependent on this stuff,
Yeah.
I think.
So the woman who schedules these techs is in New York, a call center in New York.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know if something's 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
it's not a local thing, but yeah, I'll do that, I'll take care of this tomorrow, that part. All right, finishing up. Thanks to Henry Gillette, he's been working very hard out there. He's very good at what he does. He was at the Walk for Westport on a Saturday, I think, or a Sunday morning. The Saturday before that, he was filming playoff soccer games in the afternoon. So he's been out getting us a lot of content, and he enjoys it too, which is the good part. He looks forward to doing that. He's doing it not just for the money. He really enjoys being out there and being creative with it. Let's see, today was Veterans Day programs. There was 2 at the high school. I went take a couple of clips in the morning at the elementary school. They were out there welcoming kids off the bus. That was really, really fun to see. And Superintendent Auburn's done a few superintendent's corners. And we've also did a couple of volleyball playoff games as well. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for John?
Just a question, when you do like superintendent's corners and stuff like that, do you send out links to the people involved and stuff that they?
No, because it's just
Do
Tom
they get to
alone.
review it or whatever?
It's just Tom alone, and he knows how to find it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
He'll mention it.
Yeah,
To
if he's
like-
watched it or whatever,
Yeah.
and say, hey.
Yep.
Okay.
Watches with his wife, and she critiques him.
Okay.
So
Valerie, do you want to bring us up to date on the concerns you had about staffing? Have you been able to, I know we talked briefly last week, but you want to bring the rest of the group up into your efforts to find more support?
Yes, I'll first say about programming. I've been doing vets talks on several of the Fridays with our veterans service agent, and she's been at the VFW PowerPoint presentation on benefits available, burial benefits, disability, medical. So that's been a good series, and that's online too. We got one more to do next, not this Friday because we've got veterans, but the next week after that. And today I went to the Macumba School, and the children did a presentation outside for the veterans that were in attendance. With the getting people to do the camera operator, I did contact Keith Tebow at BCC that runs the public access, and he said that if he knew anybody, he'd send them my way. But so I did look into UMass Dartmouth, and there's a thing they have, an app thing. The system is called Handshake, and I hadn't heard about it before, but I guess schools get on there, and then I post a job, and then they accept the job, and then the students can go to that. It's like a central location to look for jobs. So I haven't gotten any applicants yet. There is a way to go through the matches and kind of ask, invite them to apply. So I have to try to do some with that. So BCC is not on the Handshake, so I would have to contact the school job center or something like that to see if anybody was available for that. We discussed how, with Irene and John, we discussed how to get more programming.
Yeah.
And Renee, we
Yeah.
brainstormed,
Right.
and,
We'll talk about that a little
yeah,
farther
all right.
down.
so
Okay,
that's about,
we
what's
have,
going on.
at the top of our old business, thank you. It's really important both of you share and let people ask questions, because we know you're doing it every day, but we want to hear any concerns. We have, I think, a little space on our agenda for an update. I haven't heard much of anything from Town Hall, but I think they've had a few more concerns. But I did watch the video. Don, I hope you had a chance to see the recording, and I think we really have done a super job of getting it out there and having people hear something of significance. So I want to thank you both for being there and doing that. And I guess, do we have any questions? We do have some follow-up steps, but I'd like not to deal with that so much today, as we can briefly talk about them. But do you have any concerns from your presentation? Do you have any additional comments?
Do we know how many people watch the selectmen's meetings? Is there a lot?
We can tell how many's watched online, but not on TV. She repeats them, there's no way to track? Not on TV.
Not on the television channel, no.
Yeah.
So we don't know how many
Nobody's-
people
nobody-
actually are watching and knowing this.
Nobody has contacted us about the contract renewal. The gentlemen who came really were the same technical questions that we've had in many varieties, which
Right.
they could have done a complaint form, but they really
I told
wanted.
them to go to the town website
Yeah.
and get the cable advisory board, there is a form on there
Right,
to fill out.
Right,
And
and
they,
we just have
they
to
were very
separate,
arrogant.
we have to separate out the technical issues from the renewal contract. That's why I think this article is important, because it says everybody's gonna complain about everything, but there is that bottom line that was the very beginning of our contract renewal proposal that, Bob, you encouraged us to include. Let's understand what we're really doing here, we're communicating, so. But I just wanted to make sure if there was anything to put into the minutes from your thoughts of having them made the presentation, we should do it tonight, and then we'll go on with what are the next things we need to do. Okay, any other thoughts? All right. We had suggested a meeting, we suggested that the attorney that specializes in this be hired. I think there was a general agreement to do that, but we haven't heard back on anything specific. And my thought is they're gonna probably be very busy through the holiday season, getting the budget ready, and that maybe we might be able to get them to think about it at the beginning of the year, and just encourage Jim Hartnett. I do think our committee would like to sit in on a preliminary, depending on how many meetings they have, but what's your sense on that?
Yeah, so I believe, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, at the select board meeting, they recommended that we kind of take the lead on that, and maybe Steve Willett would be a part of that process.
That's exactly correct. When, part of our goal was to hand off the report to the selectmen, and say, here it is, and you can renew the contract, and they handed it back saying, great job, continue to meet with the Director of Government Affairs, and I think that, at some point, the only really contracting authority in the town is the Board of Selectmen, or are the Board of Selectmen, and I think at some point it'll have to be delivered to them, but I think meeting from my standpoint, I think meeting with the Director of Government Affairs from the provider is really the next most important step.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's done through the attorney, or we have representation. So what was, I need to get clarification, I think, or we need to get clarification from Jim Hartnett, whether or not we can, whether that vote to proceed and, accept was a vote to retain Attorney Ewig's services. And I believe it was, but I just don't wanna go ahead and say, okay, you're hired, and
That should be all. Anyone else?
yeah, that should be organized through him, and maybe what we do is, if you wanna reach out to Jim.
I will follow up with Jim, because he also sent letters from Charter saying we should be, from the,
Right.
Yep.
so let's say we need your support and clarity on all of this, and we'll have a discussion.
Is he
Okay.
the only attorney
Yeah.
in the area who does Fall River?
He specializes in it, and he's done a number of contracts in the area. He's finalizing the Fall River one, he's done New Bedford, he's done Brockton.
So he's
He's part of KP Law,
He's the
which
guy.
yeah, he's the man. He knows,
I mean,
He knows.
He did the last renewal.
and he did that's the other benefit, is he did the
The only
original
problem
renewal.
last time we had
it should,
was over the phone because he was stuck in Boston traffic. He never showed up face to face,
Yeah,
and you kind of lose it because
yeah.
and I think if they're gonna hire the attorney, probably a face with our committee and the select board, so that the attorney understands, you know, has room for any questions about the proposal as written, because that doesn't mean the selectmen have to, that doesn't mean it's final as far as
is
they're
it
concerned.
possible to have
We
a-
can get involved. This is not gonna happen overnight, but
Is it
we
possible-
wanna get it moving in the right
Is
direction.
it possible to have a special meeting between Cable Advisory and the Board of Selectmen together?
Yeah, that's,
Just, you
That-
know,
that's
about
fine.
nothing else will be discussed, just cable, not all the town affairs, or it's just like a restrictive meeting where, you know, to the public.
and the
Sure.
same with this, the next thing on the agenda, this John Mayer, who's Director of Government Affairs. I think if the selectmen are willing to meet with us, or, you know, we could go at the beginning of one of their meetings or something, so that we get this person to
But we
know
want
he's
the-
not just,
We should have a time
So-
constraint. If you go to a regular selectmen's meeting, they're gonna block you out with 10, 15 minutes.
yeah,
You might need an hour.
Sure.
yeah.
A
I'll,
little-
I'll talk to Jim Hartnett, and
Yeah.
I'll have information for you for December.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has the clarity of also what went on, and we can review the tape and the minutes, but, as Bob mentioned, I believe we are to take the lead. I do think that, maybe a special meeting with the select board would be in order, when we get close
Right.
to, I think after we've met with the attorney,
Yeah.
after we've done our due diligence, after we can go to the board and say, okay, we're, you know, getting close to finalizing a potential contract. But I do believe that we have representation in Steve Willett,
Yep.
who
Yeah,
agreed to be part of
absolutely.
it. And I think maybe, the
Yeah.
next
And-
step
and
would
with the
really
budget-
be,
With the budgets being gathered this month from all the different departments, I didn't think this was gonna be on anybody's radar, but if we could get the questions asked and lay it out for the next couple of months, so we stay on top of it. Bottom line, it's their decision, but we could keep the ball rolling along.
yeah, I think after the holidays,
Yeah.
certainly we can
Well,
move it.
this past week, we talked, Renee and I talked with Valerie and John about their thoughts on programming, because has been a big interest of mine in getting on this committee. And the proposal includes the fact that our channel renewal is about being able to reach more and more. And we just let it roll about what is possible. And I don't know if this needs to be an in-depth conversation, because we just asked both of you to start thinking about what might happen. And that particular day, we said, maybe we should have the superintendent and the school, and the select board talking about this question 5. You know, that was an example. There were some other examples of things. And the reality of turning something around on a dime, so to speak, is very challenging. And that's probably number one, on how quickly can you do new programming, or relevant program. But John, anything you recall that becomes important to you out of this brainstorming that we did last week? Because I want to begin to get your thoughts and Valerie's thoughts on expanding programming or changing it. It's sort of the one area that I think we have some real creative license. And I don't mean for us to go on for a long time about it, because we'll have to come back and, you know, with what you really want to do. But what's your ideas?
Well, one of the good things we talked about, this is more for Donald and Mr. Dale, because they weren't there, but we had talked about maybe hiring a part-time person. I'm gonna talk to Jim Hartnett when we go into our, when we have our budget meeting, And that could be one of this person's. If we had a part-timer, that would solve a lot of issues we have now. Valerie always struggles with the kids to work meetings. There's 22 meetings on average every month, I think. That would help solve that problem. We also we had a little discussion about having more of a social media presence. And I've never done Facebook in my life. So this is something this person could probably do. And what that does is that helps promote what we're doing. And this new person could also, along with us, help produce more programming. Because it's tough. Valerie works nights, so it's tough for her to come in the morning and go do a show in the morning, then have to stay at night. You know, I start early. I have the school duties all day, and then what I do. So it would be good to have that extra hand. We can still do it without this person, but I think if we're talking about having really blown up this public access channel, I think an extra set of hands, talented hands, would be would get us to that quicker and be more efficient. Like I said, we can still do it, but we just can't bang out as many shows as if we had extra help doing that. And a lot of things, and that helps usually, the meetings are at night, but the help for doing programming is during the day. That's when people can go out when everything's open, is more during the day hours. So, hope that answers
Valerie,
your
do you want
question.
to add your thoughts to this conversation? What I'm hoping is that the board itself will start thinking about areas that they think we should be looking at for programming, where the community might benefit, because it is staff, as John talked about, it's staff time. There's probably a lot of other issues. Renee, please contribute. I don't need this to be an in-depth conversation, but I want to get some of the ideas up and moving, so at some point in the next couple of months, we can come up with some new ideas. And this is because as we get through the spring and the town is looking at a renewal, as this article has outlined, we're going to hear a lot of people who have technical problems, who have cost problems, who have really the basic problems of life. And we've got to begin to talk about what the renewal has in positive terms, I think.
Sure.
So this is a beginning of letting ourselves expand some thinking. Valerie, do you want to add anything to the conversation?
Yes, I'll add a few other things that were discussed in terms of promoting programming. We talked about doing a minute recap after some of the meetings, starting with the select board. Right after the meeting when they're there, what were the highlights, what's the summary? And so that we're going to try with the next selectmen meeting. And we talked about some discussions outside of a regular planning board meeting or a Board of Health meeting about discussing some of the big issues. The Route 6 project is something that's very involved. It's going to be a big project, and there has been a lot of discussion on it, but it's been in a meeting format, so this would be more like a informal discussion with a couple people, and the old school, that's another big thing. So we talked you were brought up as being, Bob, as being kind of, because you seemed into that about getting these issues brought to the forefront, so we can work on doing I'd record it, and you could either host it or get some people to host, and that would,
Yeah, I think there are issues that could get broadcasted. There's going to be several. I think there will be just around the budget and the town's financing, the structural operating budget that we have, the likelihood of needing a override to reset that, and and sort of open up a conversation about, you know, if the holy grail is low taxes, how does any of this work? You know, the idea of having that discussion. The idea of the Route 6 project, and a real public debate about the reuse of the old high school. Now, Valerie, I think that's an interesting question of what do you do with it? And what is the consensus around the recommendation, which is, I believe, is to move all of the town operations into that building, and then sell this, the town hall, and the senior center, as a way of offsetting the cost of the move. And there's some interesting questions about who is a buyer for Old Town Hall, and what can they do with it? And,
Yeah. There's just so much information that's floating around through the different committees and, the senior center, and the Council on Aging has a whole program where people can connect to online classes and things. All of that could be added, could be available, I think, but this is a huge leap until we know what that's gonna take. Is it gonna add 92 more hours to staff time? I have no idea.
Well,
I do know that there is room for people to have more reason to connect. And now that it's on YouTube, you know, to understand how to get access to that information, especially for people who didn't grow up in the middle of a technology world. They don't really know how to get access to all of the things. The government channel, if they're connected to that, but if it's an emergency or something. But I don't want to keep talking. I want to hear your ideas. I want John and Valerie to keep thinking, and we'll come back to this. And Renee, if you have any thoughts, because you were involved, to keep us going. Don, did you want to add anything to the programming, or do you just want to?
Not really right now. I mean, they're doing a great job right now. You're limited right now what you can do until you get your server running and all other stuff, which might be someday in the next 2 or 3 years, but they're waiting for an upgrade, is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's no lack of programming ideas. There are a lot of really good ideas, and that's really the first I've heard about the use of the old school. I'd be curious if there is a way to solicit opinions from people on the street, you know, maybe, you know, even taking a camera outside of Lee's and saying, hey, what do you think the old high school should be used for? You know, kind of like a man on the street interview. You get enough of those from people, you might have some programming right from something like that, that, you know, actually the select board could use as information. You know, eventually I would imagine it would be some sort of a referendum question or something like that on the ballot anyway, but to get a sense of reading that. The other thing is, I do think that the social media is a great way to attract Westporters that don't have cable, and I think that's the whole concept with this whole thing is you're almost isolated. You're not, although you're funded by cable, you're your own entity, and the whole point of you know the talks that we've had with the Internet Advisory Board and you know all of the positive comments that we got even from the select board about what you do means that you know the future of your programming really should be everywhere it possibly can be, because we only have 4,000 and 4,500 cable subscribers out of how many town residents? 16,000. So the whole point is really to reach those other, 10,000, 12,000,
But how many-
residents some way. The ones that don't live here, the ones that are transient,
But how many buildings do we have? I mean, you got 15,000 people, but how many physical houses do you have?
sure, they
You
say
have to
whatever,
go by
two
that,
and a
you know,
half, two and a
you only
half.
have
yeah,
10 people if you
yeah.
go out, you have to, it might be only,
But I think social
It's about-
media
it's about
will,
60 It's about 6,600
right,
dwellings.
social media will help that, I think, and I think,
I think this opens up some really important doors, because my sense is, once we get into the new year, which is not too far away, the issues around the town's fiscal concerns and this renewal contract, which will have a lot of people complaining once they hear that that's gonna be on the agenda, and costs and so on. We're gonna have to answer a lot of questions, so we're gonna have to do some way to talk to the public about why this is gonna move ahead, and why there's some value in looking at it move ahead, and I think that, the selectmen are gonna appreciate
it
some,
was strange, that gentleman that we were talking to, when you went out, they said,
Yeah.
get rid of everything, we don't want nothing.
Absolutely.
That's a bad attitude
Yeah.
to have,
sure,
because.
well, what I don't think we want is what we heard about when we talked to Charter a few months ago. The guy didn't want to come because they were all screaming at him. And there's always that possibility. So if we can begin to say, these are the things that your local community TV can do, will do, hopes to do,
Like,
at least that gives some positive direction on all of
like I
this.
told him, I said, go to our website, Cable Advisory Board, we have a complaint form.
Yeah.
Your friends and neighbors, if they're all complaining in your neighborhood, have each person fill out the form. Now, we get documentation.
Yeah.
We talk to Charter, a phone call, they can say they never got it.
Yeah.
They're talking to some call center in who knows where.
They have to write it down, because
Right.
just
We
coming
have
to a
to- that's
meeting
right. I
and
told
screaming
him,
at us or yelling at
Fill out
us
the
isn't
fill
gonna
out the
solve
claim
their
form,
problem. Yeah.
the complaint form.
Yeah.
And we meet with Charter, here's a stack off our website, residents that are complaining, and here's the facts.
Right,
Now you got black and white
right,
information, here it is. You can't deny,
absolutely, absolutely.
I
And
told
being
you.
open to that, I think, is important too.
I would like to briefly
Well,
follow
the
up on a
meeting
point
isn't
that-
intended to answer any big questions tonight, except will Renee make it for another year?
I'd like to follow up on a comment that Renee made, which is a very important project, in that, the comment, which is, hiring part-time staff. Since you're the boss of, this money, and you control this money, I would, and we think about doing the kind of programming you're talking about, look at your budget and look how much money you have, and think about, hiring someone part-time. It's another one of the structural mysteries that have, exist in this, in the town, the authority of directors, and who do you work for, and he lives in the school, but he gets paid out of,
Yeah.
out of the fund that
Yeah,
we are
I
only.
think that's really important then,
We are only advisory
yeah.
to, but he's actually the director of that program.
Yeah.
And I think if, we think about the good ideas that you had, Valerie, about, man-on-the-street interviews, or follow-up, or discussion, a sort of a pro and con kind of, meeting about what to do with the old high school, or should there be sewer and water on Route 6, and what are the pros and cons of that? And then, something that was then put into the social media format that people if they live in New York but some are here, they could get access to. I think that's something that explore, because it will fail if we don't have help. And I think there's money in the budget I mean, we're not broke.
No.
So,
No.
so there's money in the budget, so you know, let's, I think it's, as an advisor to the director, I would suggest that you do that.
This is just an opportunity for people to start thinking about it ahead. December gets to be very busy, and I know that, we don't have a specific agenda. I will talk with John and Valerie again. We don't have a specific, a number of things that we have to really resolve. So how many people, feel we have to meet in December? If clearly there are issues to vote on, I would have a meeting. But, do people at this point feel that we could wait till January? Or do you think
I
that
do.
we should stay in touch?
Unless something.
I could promise food again, but I'm not making any bribes, none.
You know, unless Charter goes bankrupt or something, and, you know, also we don't have anybody.
No,
Yeah.
I think we can hold off on a December meeting, and I think if we can just get some direction, maybe if you want to reach out to Jim Hartnett
Yeah.
about the attorney, and if he wants me to take the lead on it, I have no problem doing that.
I'll
And at
talk to
least-
Jim and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I'll follow up and I'll also follow up with staff about keeping this idea of what we really want to present as possibilities to the community. I didn't ask you for your budget because I didn't get a chance to check with you today whether you have been able to complete it, but have you finished your budget request for this year?
No.
Okay, so that
No.
you might want to share that with the board
Yep.
once you get it finished and
Yep.
ready to submit. I think the things that we need to do can bubble a little, that I'm happy to wait until January and greet you all in the new year, so to speak. Okay, any other business?
Yeah, one thing I just would like to mention to the board is that on Monday, the Internet Advisory Committee is doing their presentation to the Board of Selectmen. So it's probably worthwhile watching and checking that segment. The representatives are from Entry Point, are actually coming to Westport to do that presentation, and basically that they'll discuss the possibilities of you know, fiber connectivity to the homes in Westport, and I think that's gonna be a big meeting,
Is this
so.
gonna be on live, or is it gonna be on?
Yeah, no, the representative is actually coming in, and it's gonna be.
No, I
a-
mean, your meeting is gonna be.
Yes, the
broadcast
select
live,
board,
or-
so
It's the
It'll be
select,
on.
it's
Yes.
part of the select
yeah.
board
Oh,
meeting.
selectmen's meeting,
Yeah,
okay.
the selectmen's meeting, so it's worthwhile, tuning
I know,
into that.
You sent me, when these guys were on, email a time, usually it's like we give you a time frame you're gonna be there. So actually, we could pull in at that time.
Get the selectmen's agenda, although they change it, but if you go to the Board of
Right.
Selectmen,
I get an email from, I get the email every week
okay,
when I get the agenda, but it doesn't give any time frame. It just gives a list of what's going on. There's no,
okay.
Yeah, they
Time.
can't go
Yeah, I-
by they can't go by time because they change things
They
there.
change
They-
them.
Yeah, you get there, and then, yeah, we kinda went out of order too, I think, when we presented,
well,
so.
you were close about 2 minutes. You
But-
had sent me an email.
And the whole idea of how
Okay,
long
yep.
it's gonna take will be
Yeah.
interesting, because I think
You
with that
go
kind of
about
a
2 weeks off.
presentation,
Yeah,
people
2
will
weeks
assume
early.
it's all gonna be in
There's
place by
actually-
April.
Yeah, there's actually a big PowerPoint and the PDF document that they're gonna share about their digital master plan is what they're calling it, so definitely worthwhile paying attention to.
And where are they out of? Are they local or a company?
No, they're not. They're I believe, Washington State, if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken.
Thank you. I think that's really important for us all to be, and if you record it and want to send a link to everybody on the board, that could be, in case people have other things that they're doing on
Sure.
Monday night, that's great. Any other business? I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Welcome.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.